Alright, so today we're gonna talk about how the takeoff and before landing briefing as part of the situational awareness concept will help us to get a better mental scheme of the stuff that is about to happen or that could happen during our flight by scoping and breaking down the entire flight before it even begins. If you want to see the previous videos about the situational awareness concept, they're going to be right here on your screen right now or also linked in the description below this video. Hi, my name is Jorge Muñoz. I'm a senior instructor pilot working in El Salvador, and as always you will find the timestamps linked in the description below this video and also in a pinned comment down below, just in case you want to check out something in particular. So let's start with what the takeoff briefing is. And the thing here is that it's basically the same concept of what a normal briefing is. Just like we discussed in the last episode, it's a mental rehearse, mental scope or mental breakdown, however you wanna call it, but this time applied to this specific portion of the flight, which is the takeoff. So with this briefing, what you're trying to do is to get the same mental scheme that we have been talking about for ages at this point, to prepare ourselves for what it's about to happen or that could happen during any portion of the flight. But this time it's only about this critical portion of the flight. What happens moments before, during and moments after the takeoff. After all, as we have said before, the main goal of having briefings is to help us to have a good situational awareness and to maintain it at all moments. Now, what should include a takeoff briefing? Basically, everything that is important to us, such as wind direction and velocity. Remember that the amount of crosswind that we have is very important, and especially on light aircrafts, since we cannot handle too much of it. Once we have that, we can also determine the runway that we are going to use. And it is always important to know which runway of the airport you are going to use. Well, first because we must need to know how much takeoff distance we have available, or if the runway has a displaced threshold and some other things. But it is very important also, once we have our runway, we can brief the possible taxiways that we are going to use, so that the ATC doesn't catch us with our pants down, because you were expecting completely different runways, and therefore different taxiways when speaking to them. Especially if you are a new student pilot. Having this happening to you will make your life much more difficult. So do yourself a favor and make a good briefing before getting on the airplane. It will only take you a few minutes. Hate to be sick. And these few minutes will certainly improve your fluency when speaking on the radio. You have my word. Anywho, once we have our runway, we can also brief our initial heading and altitude. Remember, it is all about to rehearse so we can create a mental image of what is going to happen over there. It is easier to do something for the first time if we have already done it before in our minds. Also, don't forget your takeoff climbing speeds. You can easily find these ones on your POH. We don't want to stall the airplane, right? Especially when we have little to no altitude to play with. Be sure to also brief your departure procedures, or i.e. what you're going to do, / where you're going to go during the following seconds or even minutes after you took off. And finally, you can't leave the ground without starting your emergency briefing, your emergency procedures for an engine failure during takeoff. That means that with that you have at least like 5 different procedures to brief, depending of the different instances and procedures of the takeoff. I'm talking about if you have or not enough altitude to try to restart the engine. Remember, it is not only about the things that are going to happen, it is also about what could happen during these moments, these critical moments. And since we don't have real engine failures on our everyday flights, it is even more crucial for us to rehearse them on our minds so we know what we have to do and we have fresh that knowledge. In the end, doing all this will only take us a very small portion of our time, and we will substantially increase our situational awareness. Now let's talk about the other briefing. That is the before landing briefing. But before we jump into that, let me tell you that if you want to become an outstanding private pilot, if you're curious and you want to prepare yourself in the best possible way for all the tests to come, or even if you are an advanced private pilot that wants to remember and perfect the basis and the knowledge of the VFR world, or you want to start your private pilot training with a heads up over the others, then I highly recommend you should check out my book, Essential Knowledge for Private Pilot. You will find the link of the book in the description below this video and also in a pinned comment down below. It is an Amazon Kindle exclusive. This book uses the two most effective study techniques in the whole world, which are active recall and spaced repetition, and it applies them into aviation. So if that sounds good to you, then please go check out the book in the description below the video. The book is available in English as well in Spanish. Remember, you shouldn't be studying hard, you should be studying effectively, and with this book you can do just that. Studying all the knowledge inside this book will also help you to improve your situational awareness by helping you create these mental schemes of how your airplane works in regard with aerodynamics. But continuing with the video, a good before landing briefing should include the general airport information and weather conditions. I mean, it's a no-brainer to know what kind of weather to expect, what kind of weather we will be facing when we arrived to the airport. That includes winds, temperature, if it's raining, snowing, cloudy, foggy, or heck, what if we are lucky and it is a good day? All that kind of stuff. You get the point. It's another no-brainer to brief which one is the active runway, since, well, we need that information to land our airplane. I think we don't need further explanation about that. So, going forward with the briefing, also make sure to include the terrain and obstacles of the airport and its surroundings. We need to know if there is any mountains, tall buildings or antennas, and such nearby the airport or on the runway's glide slope, because that will entirely affect the way we perform our approach to the airport. It will affect where we can start our descent, and because of that, it can also affect our descent rate. Next on, we can also brief the airport elevation and traffic pattern altitude if you didn't include that already on the general information of the airport portion. After all, we don't want to descend too low before ever being able to reach the runway, nor to stay too high so that we cannot make a good descent and traffic pattern to the airport. And last but not least, we should also brief the entry that we're going to use to get into said traffic pattern. The entrance will change depending where we are coming from, in regard to the airport and also the active runway. Usually you perform this briefing after you get the airport information via ATIS, which is an automated frequency that gives you the current airport information, for those that are not too familiarized with this concept, or by talking to the ATC directly. But you can also, and I personally recommend, to make a before landing briefing along with the takeoff briefing. Yes, before you get on the airplane. And yes, I know that sometimes things can change by the time that you are about to land, but some other things won't, like the elevation of the airport or the obstacles around it. It is always better, in my opinion, to have a complete mental scope of the whole flight since the very beginning. Since, just as the takeoff briefing, the end goal of this one is to improve our situational awareness as much as possible for each individual flight. So, if you found this video interesting, or you have further doubts about situational awareness in general, or on how to create a good mental scope and breakdown of your flight to get a better mental scheme, then you should check out this video over here, or maybe this other video over here. if you want to know about the essential knowledge for private pilot. Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, like, comment, and all that stuff, and I hope to see you in another video. Bye bye.